tax impacts and explain all that. So
For some reason it's not going on YouTube, but I did it earlier.
with that said, kind of how did we get here? The Board of Education has a building and grounds committee that's comprised of three of its board members. And they meet at least quarterly, sometimes more, depending on what the needs are. But part of their annual process is to review what's called a long-term facility maintenance plan. And that's a plan that covers 10 years. And so the goal every year is to, review that, make changes, things like that. One of the things that have moved its way up, on that plan has been the roof. The reason for that is the frequency of water leaks in the spring, rains in the fall, those types of things. Then also the number of breakdowns with the rooftop units. And I'm talking strictly about the 2002 portion of the building. This is all separate from the 2015 edition. So with that said, we had a facilities analysis study completed in the spring of 2020 to inspect everything and look things over. And Preston from R.I. Morton completed that in May of 2020. Then the board wanted to use a process that was done in the past, and that was a community process. And so a community facilities task force was formed, and they started meeting in the fall of 2020. And we tried to have broad representation from business owners to farmers to staff to parents, grandparents, those types of committee to give us a broad perspective of everything. And then obviously having to work through COVID was a challenge in terms of maybe some of the processes we did in the past we weren't able to do this year because of COVID. So one of the strategies we talked about was using a third-party vendor to get input from the community, and we felt doing it a third party would be takes the bias out of it from the school district perspective, and also adds a layer of transparency. So the board took that recommendation and hired School Perceptions of Slinger, Wisconsin. And they did a survey that gathered input from September 14th through October 5th. And then that data from the survey, they presented the recommendations to the board on October 19th and then back to the task force on the 21st. The board discussed the results and recommendations from the task force on November 9th, and then they approved a submission of review and comment to the Minnesota Department of Education. The board passed an election resolution on November 23rd for a 2-ballot bond referendum. The Minnesota Department of Education gave a positive review and comment on December 29th, which the board discussed at their January 11th meeting. And then all our materials and publications are on our website. And so now we're at the public meeting phase of everything, with tonight being the final one. And then the election date is Tuesday, February 9th. So please remember to get out and vote. So a little bit about the survey. School Perceptions has done over 10,000 surveys in over 600 school districts. The survey was done mid-September through early October, and it was predicated on obviously meeting the needs of, the expediting the process with the leaking roof and the units. Then also the board or school districts in Minnesota only have so many days in a calendar year where they can run school district elections. So you kind of have to backward map that from when you want to run your election and then to when you could do your surveying. Each resident in the school district was mailed a paper survey, or they could also have done it online using a unique code to protect data validity. And we did quite well with the number of responses. We got 381 responses from residents in our district, which is about 5% higher than a normal participation rate for a survey. And then the margin of error is plus or minus 5.1%. This is where the responses came from within our school district. Some of the questions were giving the board perceptions of how they're perceived using the data from the public. And the column we paid most closest attention to is the far right, the non-parents, non-staff column. And it uses a 4-point scale. And so you can see, anything close to 3 or higher is very good. And so the lowest ranking was the 2.84 in the far right column. So everything was right around 3 or higher. So very good results there. 94% were satisfied or very satisfied with the school district. And then we got into dropping some ideas about what the base plan would look like. I talked about the rooftop units, the roofing, but then also we added some extra things that need to be done for safety and security, some doors, some getting up to code with locker rooms, and then repaving the parking lot, things like that. So we call that the base plan. People supported the base plan pretty strong, right around 63% were yes or definitely yes in how they voted. Only 15% were a definite no. So that left 22% undecided. And typically what you see there is those people just wanting more information before they make a decision. So, obviously some will become yes and some will probably become no. Then we asked some individual type questions just to see where people stood on their level of support. This used a 3-point scale. And so again, we paid particular close attention to the non-parent residents column. And anything here, 2 or higher, right around there, showed pretty strong support. Well, in working with the consultants, they started to notice a pretty good drop-off after the auditorium. And so then these 3 projects, the windows, the walking paths, the auditorium, those things were moved into the base plan because of the higher level of support. And then these outside items were left as a separate question. So that's really where the 2-question ballot came from, was using the data from the community survey. So when you put everything together, it comes to 10.94 million. And then now where would people sit on their level of support? Well, the data shows that right around 46% would be yes or definitely yes, but still only 25% were a definite no, which left a large percent in the middle undecided. Again, another data point to indicate the strategy of using a 2-question ballot. So again, the 29% of people probably wanting to know more about the projects. So the conclusion was this: the base plan had a strong support of around 64%, which was the roof, the parking lot, the rooftop units, etc. The strongest support for the additional projects was the auditorium, the doors, the windows, those types of things. So those are moved to question 1. And then the other projects like the track, football field, the lights, the press box, although they were shown to have around 50-50%, around 30% needed more information. So that's why the board elected for a separate question, or question 2, on the ballot. At this time, I'll turn it over to Preston Early from R.A. Morton. He'll take us through some of the project budget and then some of the scope of the work. Are you there, Preston?
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
No problem.
All right, let me start over. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
The information that is in front of you on the screen now is a summary of the costs that were segmented into question 1 and question 2 as submitted to the Department of Education for review and comment. We took the information from the facilities analysis and assigned costs and prioritized each of the items, and then formalize them into the major category segments as you see on the screen. As we looked at the final budgets, that's also what we looked at in comparing it to the survey to establish that final budget. Under question 1, the main or major categories start with the HVAC and plumbing upgrades. There are 35 rooftop units and a number of fixtures within the building that were identified as needing replacement as they are at the end of their life cycles. That category ended up at $2,044,000. Security and communications upgrade include the camera systems and public address systems in the school, as well as some bus cameras at $294,000. Roof replacement category added up to $1,661,000. To repair joints, caulk, and EFIS repair, the building itself is primarily a precast structure system where the individual panels are caulked at the joints, and so that is the majority of the category here of replacing that joint systems. The maintenance updates include doors, hardware, the windows category, replacing vinyl composite tile and carpet. It also includes renovating the locker room shower areas, the kitchen flooring, freezer and cooler, and some work in the auditorium for flooring, curtains, and lighting and presentation items. That maintenance category at $970,000. The site improvements are the parking lot to mill and replace the 2002 parking lot, and also included some work in the playgrounds and walking paths at $647,000. The fees, permits, and testing at $877,000. We also included a contingency to cover the unknowns during the final plan designs and also unknowns within the construction timeframe at $591,000. And we also applied an escalation factor of $177,000. The escalation factor is to cover the time when we prepared these estimates with current costs to the time we would actually be bidding out the project. And so that is escalation or inflation factor is $177,000. So the base construction cost for question 1 of $7,562,000. The finance costs, or what's listed under the other costs here, total $303,000 for a total question 1 bond amount of $7,865,000. Under question 2, the outdoor activity and field updates include to resurface the track, lighting for the baseball and softball fields, football field turf, replacing scoreboards at football, baseball, and softball, expanding the football press box and expanding concessions, and then converting the south softball field into a baseball field use. That total is $2,229,000. We also have fees, permits, and testing of $330,000, contingency at $223,000, and escalation of $67,000 for a base construction of $2,850,000. Adding in the soft costs, the total of question 2 bond amount will be $2,950,000. I'm now going to walk you through some of the graphics and visuals for each of these categories. So again, within question 1, we looked at the areas of roof repair that is needed. The typical lifespan of the type of roof on the building is 15 to 20 years. So we're at or extended beyond that 15-year mark. And we would only be replacing the 2002 building, not the 2015 work that was done. At this time, we haven't noticed any apparent mold from the leaks in the building, but it is time to capture that and fix that before we do end up with any issues. So if we go to the next slide. This is just the graphic of the 2002 building and the different roof sections that would be replaced. So it is a fairly large point or majority of the building. The next slide shows some of the telltale signs of roof rubber that is failing. And when it starts to stretch at the corners or the edges of the building, as you can see, it's starting to pull away from the edges. That is a real sign that the rubber is starting to get to a point where either major repair or replacement is needed. And so that is some graphics there where the arrows are showing of that pulling away. The next slide highlights or shows the rooftop units that we would be looking to replace. There are 35 units to be replaced. And again, they're at the end of their life cycle, and the annual repair costs and ability to get parts is getting hard. So it is time to look at those replacements. The next slide shows in the red boxes are where those rooftop units are located. The one blue box represents a unit that was replaced in 2015 to accommodate some of the addition work in the 2015 project. The parking lot repair, the 2002 parking lot has several cracked and areas that are deteriorating. Even though the district has done a nice job with seal coating and maintenance work, it is time to mill and overlay the oldest part of the parking lot. This is a graphic that shows the shaded gray areas of the parking lot that would be milled and overlaid. The current freezer and cooler are original with the building. Again, with maintenance issues and repair parts, we're looking at replacing both the cooler and the freezer. That will help with consistency for those two pieces of equipment. This graphic represents what I had mentioned about the caulk joints of the precast panels, the building exterior shell. As you can see in the picture, there are areas where the caulk is starting to shrink and stretch away from the precast, and that leaves an area where water can enter into the joints of the building. And so we would cut out the caulk, install a new backer rod, and then re-caulk all of the joints throughout the building. This graphic shows some of the original vinyl composite tile within the hallways in the classrooms. And so we would be replacing that floor tile with new tiling systems. This graphic shows some of the fire doors and exterior doors that we would be looking to repair and or replace as part of the project. These three are highlighting the safety and security items. As mentioned, the public address intercom system was original to 2002, and there are several areas within the building where it is hard to hear, especially some of the larger group areas. In an emergency situation, it would be important to have a good operating system that is heard by all. We would also be looking to update the current camera system throughout the building, and then update the current bus cameras and stop arms for student safety. We would be looking to renovate the shower areas within the locker rooms. Right now, current code would require individual shower stalls. And what you have is more of a multi-head common shower arrangement in the locker room. So we'll be renovating the 4 locker room shower areas into individual stalls. At the auditorium, replacing the current stage curtain with new curtain to meet fire code. And then in addition to replacing the cooler and freezer in the kitchen, we would be replacing the floor system with an approved flooring surface for the kitchen floor. I'm going to turn it over to Dan Goldman with Wendell Architects, and he'll walk us through some of the floor plan graphics for these improvements.
Thank you, Preston. So this is a floor plan of the building, just helping provide a visual aid for where this work is actually happening. So the darker red areas that highlight majority of the classrooms in the building, and then the light pink in the hallways, that's showing the extent of the vinyl tile flooring replacement. The purple circles scattered throughout, that shows locations of door and hardware replacement. The green up at the top, that's the kitchen area, so that's showing where we have the flooring replacement there, the cooler, freezer work. The orange would be the auditorium, so that's where the carpet replacement, house lights, curtains, and sound system work is happening. And then the blue area off to the side, that is the locker room showers where Preston just mentioned those would be converted into single stalls. At the top, we do list a few of the other items. They're kind of hard to show on a floor plan, but plumbing fixture replacement, some more of the envelope work like exterior door replacement, window replacement, the panel joints, and then also the EFIS maintenance. And this is a site plan of the athletic facilities. So I guess you can see the running track in the dark charcoal oval there. That's slated for resurfacing, which at the same time at the main field there inside of it would be installing new field turf. So that would provide multi-purpose space. So you can see listed here, you have football, softball, phy-ed class, youth programs, and turf can be used right away in the spring, so that becomes a practice space immediately when the snow is off. So by installing turf here, that allows you to capture one additional softball field, which in turn then allows the lower softball field to be converted to a baseball field. And then a number of other additional updates throughout. We have lighting at the main softball and baseball fields, scoreboard replacement, expansion of the press box, and then also expansion of the concessions.
Thanks, Dan. Some of the questions, we've gotten from on the district perspective is just, comparing, the current football field to, as Dan was alluding to, some of the multi-purpose uses the turf would provide the district. Really, from the district perspective, I don't want to get hung up so much on the cost analytics of comparing grass to turf. We're comparing, really, we want to get into the idea of usage. It's still, it's like an outdoor classroom space. So we want to make sure our spaces are used as often as possible. So currently, with the grass only football field, we calculated we're only using that about 608 hours per year, and primarily limited to the months of August through October. There are some expenses. We figured around, 13,000 for, irrigation and maintenance and that, and painting the lines and fertilizing and labor and equipment and field prep and mowing, those types of things. And those costs vary depending on the year with rainfall, field conditions, those types of things. But in terms of usage right now, it's primarily only used for games. And so the varsity football really drives when that space is used. And so if we have a wet week or something like that, then we end up even using it less, because we'll move the junior high or JV games off that field to a different space just to protect the field conditions for that. And so, those programs have expanded down to elementary football now. We've added community education with soccer, and then the baseball and softball associations run, preschool all the way through older kids baseball. And now we also have town team ball that uses our facilities. So we really are preschool through adult in terms of a community school. So we figured the turf alternative would give us about 3,000 hours a year on that space, or roughly 5 times as much as it's being used now. As Dan alluded to, there's really no waiting for the ground to dry. I think as soon as the snow's off, you can basically play on it. Obviously we wouldn't have to water it or fertilize it or anything like that. And then there's no recovery time between events. So you can just basically have practice on it. You can play games on it as often as you want, regardless of the ground moisture. And then we're really, off Dan's point, keeping 2 softball fields and then adding a second baseball field, which is much needed in terms of those kids not having any space, especially in the spring. So that's really how we have to look at that. And I think, Mr. Hanson, did you want to add anything more to the turf, or are you good?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things. Hey, how exciting! We're 1 week away for Laker Nation to go to the ballot box and vote for question 1 and 2. And just want to thank everybody that's on here for all the hard work you put in. But this is really an exciting time for Laker Nation. We got an opportunity to be a front runner in improving our school, both inside and outside. Just the questions that I've been asked about the outdoor facility. To be really honest, the elephant in the room has been the field turf. But as we've gone through this process, the more and more people that we've talked to, they've told me now that it's really starting to make sense, because like what Chris said, it's about how much can you use that space. And if you go to Field Turf's website, if you take an 80,000 square foot football field, grass football field, so your cost per hour on using it from, basically August through October is about $90 an hour. Okay. That's with watering and the fertilizer, the herbicides, everything you're talking about. Once you install the field turf, you're looking at about $25 per hour of usage. When you're using a field 3,000 hours, that's really cutting that cost down. So when you talk about cost effectiveness, the turf field is something that it's not just used for football, it's used for our whole community. And the people that I've talked to, I have a good friend down in Austin that said that they put field turf in down at their complex, and they just said that they have no regrets. Like the amount of other people in area towns that come in and use it, where they're able to charge rent, that he said it's just really a no-brainer to install your turf. And he just really wishes our community well, and that wishes us luck with improving our facilities both inside and outside. But the people I've talked to, question 1 has been all support. Question 2 has had a lot of support, just a lot of questions on the turf. And I had one question yesterday, what is the maintenance cost on the turf? And Field Turf from their website again, per year, you're looking around a few $1,000s compared to $14,000 a year now for the paint, the fertilizer, the herbicide. So when you talk about cost or comparing apples to apples, there's a lot of benefits. But I think the last thing that I want to leave everybody with is the Field Turf Technologies has made the surface so much more safer. There's 44% fewer concussions on turf. There's 43% fewer ACL injuries, and there's 25% lost time for injury. So, when you talk about improving your school facilities, we got a great opportunity, Laker Nation, and why not us? And let's be the front runner. Russell Tyler Ruthen's building a brand new school. They're putting in field turf. Why are they putting in field turf? Because they're going to be able to use it, for 9 months out of the year. And it's not just used for athletics, but it's used for the community. It's used for community education. It's used for preschool, elementary, junior high school, and high school. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Matt Hammer with Ellers Financial. Matt will take us through the tax and finance information.
Thank you, Chris, and we're going to touch on tax and finance information for the plan that will be out to vote here on February 9th. So with that, school taxes in Minnesota are spread on two tax bases. The first is the net tax capacity tax base, which is what school building bonds, which is the tax base that the bonds will be spread on if the election passes here on the 9th. And then the other tax base, which you may have heard of, is called referendum market value, which even in the name, it's where districts that have operating referendums, those taxes are spread, and then a few other less known revenue sources, your equity revenue, transition revenue, are spread. And the main difference is net tax capacity levies are spread on all taxpayers, and referendum market value taxes are only spread on residential and commercial tax bases, and the ag land and cabins are excluded. So with that, we'll move forward here and look at the Lakeview tax base. And every school district in the state of Minnesota has a unique tax base makeup. And here we've outlined in red the qualifying agricultural land in the Lakeview School District because it makes up such a significant part of the overall tax base. So the column on the far right, that's the net tax capacity tax base, which is the tax base that the school building bonds will be spread over. And if you think of a dollar bill, in essence, if you had to pay a buck for something, residential homesteads would pay 11 cents of that overall dollar, and qualifying ag land would pick up 71 cents of that overall dollar. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go into the later slides, but there is a state program that came into place with the legislative session in 2017 that started a program that's called the Ag to School Credit. And we'll touch on that later, but that's a significant program when you consider that 71% of the tax base in Lakeview is made up of qualifying ag land. So this is our debt plan which is an amortization schedule that outlines the district's existing commitments on the left, and then the proposed new debt in the middle. And there's a lot of information going on here, but the important piece to kind of highlight in this chart is that school districts, unlike a home mortgage where you have principal and interest payments typically going on in every year or on every payment, districts can structure their debt and allow for kind of evening out the tax burden on taxpayers over the life of their debt issuance, to create more consistency in the tax rates. So here, this is the debt plan for question 1 of the plan. You can see the principal amount's a little bit more than 7.8 million. And the assumed interest rate, we created these plans back in October, is 2.75%. Now, interest rates right now in current markets are at historic lows. And if we would sell the bonds today, the interest rate would be much less, which would mean savings for the taxpayers on the tax impacts that we'll look at as we move forward. The other thing here is the assumed growth in the tax base. The district's tax base right now has remained fairly stable over the last number of years, and we're not assuming a lot of future growth, and we're assuming that tax base and the tax capacity will remain pretty consistent over the term of the bonds. When we look at the next page is a graphical representation of that information, which I think is a little bit easier to take a look at. The blue bars here are the district's existing debt service payments or tax rates, which is a tax rate that is needed to pay those existing debt service payments. And then the green bar here is the proposed new debt service payments and the effective tax rates that would be required to pay those debt service payments. So when we were talking before, we were able to structure debt in a way where we can kind of create some consistency and some predictability with the tax rate over time. And here you'll see that the first 4 years, starting in taxes payable 22, district taxes for taxpayers would increase slightly between taxes payable 21 and the current year, which taxpayers are paying taxes on, and then remain at that level till about taxes payable 25, and then subsequently step back down, and taxes would actually be at a lower level than taxpayers are paying currently in taxes payable 21 for the debt service levies the school district currently has. So this is kind of an important piece of the overall plan because taxes aren't going to go up for 20 years. They'll actually only go up for the first 4 years, and then they're going to subsequently step down if question 1 passes. The next page is assuming both questions pass. And in this is the same information up on the top left. We're looking at a little bit over $10.8 million worth of bonds. And then the same 2.75% interest rate with the assumed same growth. I think the next chart is probably the easier chart to look at as a whole. So even here, if both questions would pass, the green chart or the green bars are the estimated tax rates if both questions pass. So again, we're looking at the first 4 years with an increase in taxes with those interest only payments. And then subsequently in 25 to 26, the taxes would step back down to slightly lower levels than taxpayers are paying on the debt service payments for the district currently in taxes payable 21. So again, even with both questions, there'd be an increase in taxes for the first 4 years, and then starting in the 5th year, taxes would fall back under levels where they are currently in taxes payable 21. So when we look at that initial tax impact in the first 4 years of the plan, this is the tax impact that we're looking at for different types of property or property type classifications. So the residential homestead properties, if you had a home valued at an estimated market value of $100,000, you'd be paying slightly less than $2 a month on question 1 if it would pass, and question 2 would be about 75 cents per month. So in total, on an annual basis, that would be about $30 annually, or about $2.50 per month. An important thing to note here is if you go out to the district's website, there's a tax calculator created. And if you look at your tax statement, you can take those estimated market values off of those parcels and put them into the tax calculator for residential and commercial properties. And you'll get a individualized calculation of what the tax impact for both questions are. So if you were going out there and your value was valued at $163,000, it's not on the chart. It would give you an individualized estimate of what question 1 would cost and question 2 would cost. Now, when we move to agricultural property, we're looking at the same information here, but it's on a per value acre basis for both agricultural homestead property and then agricultural non-homestead property. Again, property owners that have ag land can go out to the website, and there's a form out there that they can fill out with their parcel information, and it'll be sent to our office, and we will provide a individualized tax estimate based on your parcel information. So ag owners, typically there's a lot more complexity when you're looking at parcels of property for ag owners with split parcels, different ways that those types of parcels are valued and assessed. if you would like, provide us with those parcels and we can provide you an individual tax impact for each individual parcel and then the parcels in total. So you can have a good idea exactly what this plan would cost for you in taxes payable 22. And then subsequently, we'll likely step down as we'll talk about with the ag credit phasing in. So with the building, school building ag credit, and I forgot to mention the last slide, that does assume that there's the 60% ag credit for taxes payable 22 is assumed in these numbers. So when we talk about the ag credit, that assumption is already made in these valuations. So on a $6,000 per acre valuation, it costs about 36 cents per year annually on per acre. And then 14 cents if question 2 passes for about 50-cent impact on a per acre basis on that $6,000 homestead property. And that does already account for the ag to school credit. So when we talk about that ag credit and the significance of what that means for Lakeview taxpayers is this is a program that was initially approved by the legislature back in 2017. And it took effect starting in taxes payable 18 and applies for any new or existing debt service that a school district has. So Lakeview has some existing debt, so you guys are already, ag owners are already receiving this tax credit on their statements. And it applies to classification 2A, 2B, and 2C properties, and most of the land most likely in Lakeview will be classified as 2A, agricultural land or tillable land, homestead and non-homestead, but it also does apply to rural vacant land as well, which sometimes hunting land or those types of properties are classified as rural vacant 2B. And then the last classification is managed forest land, which I don't think there's probably a lot of in the Lakeview School District. But the credit initially started in taxes payable 2018 at the 40% level. And then the legislature actually by bipartisan support increased that threshold with legislation that was passed in 2019. And at that time, the legislation increases the phase in from 50% in taxes payable 20 all the way up to the 70% level in taxes payable 23. So the initial levy for the first year is going to be taxes paid in taxes payable 22. It'll be at the 60% level. And then for the rest of the 19 years of the bond issue, it'll be paid at the 70% level. It is an ongoing credit. It's automatically deducted from property taxes. So there is no forms that a property owner would need to complete. It's going to automatically show up on your tax statements. And it's not a shift in property taxes to other property taxpayers in the district. It actually is paid out of the state's general fund and comes to the district from the state of Minnesota to subsidize the portion of the debt service payment. So this is just a snapshot. You should be seeing the ag building bond credit on your tax statement already for the existing debt service that Lakeview School District currently has. And then the next slide just shows that significance of what this means for the school district. So if you think back to that initial slide, 71% of the district's net tax capacity was made up of qualifying agricultural land that qualifies for the ag credit. And as that ag credit, the first year is paid at 60%, and then the rest of the 19 years is paid at that 70% level. That equates to about 50% of the debt service over the term of the bonds. Here is assuming that both questions passed would be paid by the state of Minnesota. And then local levy would pick up about 22%, those ag owners and for their ag land and buildings would pick up. And then the rest would be picked up by residential, commercial, and other property tax types within the district. So when you think, you kind of roll this movie back to pre-2018, the ag land and buildings, that orange part of the bar would funnel all the way over and cover the entire gray portion of this chart. And ag owners would be picking up that roughly 71%, 72% of the levy. Now with the ag credit in play, phasing into its full level in taxes payable 23, that share is a little bit more even, and there's been a definite equity created in the system for ag owners across the state of Minnesota, especially for these districts that had large portions of their property tax base that are made up of qualifying ag land. So this just kind of takes another look and kind of shows that impact over time. If we look at a $7,000 homestead acre here, we're looking at both existing debt that the district has had already on their books, and then the proposed new debt service payments, which are in orange. And that is represented by that 59 cents for taxes payable 22 and that 44-cent estimate as the ag credit phases in taxes payable 23. So when you look on the far left, taxes payable 2017, there was no ag credit in place at that time. Legislation in 2017 was passed, which kicked in the ag credit at that 40% level and dropped taxes from that estimated $5.77 per acre down to the $3.60 level. And then subsequently, it's been coming down as the ag credit's been phasing in over time. And it's important to note here, taxes payable 21 is at that 55% level, and taxes are about $2.70 per acre. Even with the plan phased in with both questions passing, taxes by taxes payable 23 will be at a lower level than those ag owners are paying currently for taxes payable 21, because taxes are going to step down with that ag credit phasing up to the 70% level in 23 and then beyond. And that's the 70% level is the full phase into that program. So 70% is would be the level that the payments would be paid at for the remainder of the issues. So now we'll shift into some refund programs and deferral programs for homeowners and homestead property within the district. We always like to point these out. We've provided a link here to the website. There is a form that must be filled out for these programs, or obviously you can consult with a tax professional to help you out. Typically these forms have to be filled out by August each year, and they're for taxes from the previous year. So there's three programs we'll touch on. The initial one is the Homestead Credit Refund Program, which is often called or referred to as a circuit breaker program. It has a refund that's based on a sliding scale that accounts for the total school property taxes a taxpayer is paying and their income levels. The maximum refund that's available to taxpayers in that program, if you have high property taxes and low income, is about $2,840 annually for homeowners and about $2,210 for renters. So renters can qualify for this program as well. The special property tax refund, that's a program that anybody can qualify for. That program comes into play if your taxes go up by more than 12% and over $100 over the prior year. And it allows for that tax refund to be calculated. And this assumes the max refund as part of that plan is a max of $1,000. All these programs are looking at your total school or total tax bill, not just your school taxes. So when you look at your tax bill, you got to account for city, county, other municipality taxes as well beyond the school taxes when you're looking at qualifying for these programs. And then the last program is the Senior Citizen Property Tax Deferral Program. And this program is actually not a credit. It actually just is a deferral for senior citizens that they can defer property taxes on their home till a later time, but it does not actually relieve the burden of the taxes. It just allows you to defer those taxes. So with that, this is our team. Greg Crow and myself have been working with the district on the plan from the get-go, and I will stay on here to answer any questions folks have at the end.
So basically, Matt, I just have a quick question for you. Scott Hansen, 712 principal. So basically looking at what you just talked about is, so with the ag to school tax credit, if questions 1 and 2 pass, 28% of the homeowners, 22% of the farmers would pay about $5.4 million in taxes, and then the state of Minnesota would cover up. So basically, it's that cost is cut in half by the ag to school credit. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. So 50% of it is going to be paid by a local levy, and the rest of it's going to come from the state of Minnesota directly to the school district.
So questions 1 and 2 pass, it's like 5.4 million for the whole thing.
Right.
Our students get what they need, our community gets what it needs, and our schools are front runner in innovation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Just to kind of recap, so like we've been talking about the election, well, the absentee voting has been open now for a while, but the election itself is on Tuesday, February 9th. And the polls are open from 12 noon until 8 p.m. And then, as in previous school district elections, we have 2 precincts. Precinct 1 is the Cottonwood Community Center, and then the townships and the city of Cottonwood are listed there. And then Wood Lake Community Center is precinct 2, and of course that's the city of Wood Lake, and then the following townships that are listed there. And that information was sent to every resident in the school district in 2 separate mailings. So that information should be out, and it's posted to our website as well. Absentee voting is covered by the Yellow Medicine County Property and Public Services Department. I do want to put a little caveat out there. Janelle Tim commented that you can actually vote by absentee in person. That'd be this Saturday, February 6th. And then that is open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that would be another option for voters if you can't make it on Tuesday. So you can absentee vote in person on Saturday, February 6th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we will send out reminders for that as well. At this time, if there's questions or comments, so typically we have 2 platforms where we've had questions, and that's the Zoom platform and then the Facebook Live. This time we'll start with Facebook Live. Mr. Lellum, do you have any questions that have?
None at this time.
Okay. No questions on Facebook Live at this time. People on Zoom, you now have the option to unmute your mic, and you can state your name and ask a question if you have anything.
Hey, it's Chris Long.
Hi, Chris.
Question for you. What's the expected lifespan of the addition roof and HVAC system?
Okay, I'll turn that over to Preston. I think that's a good question, Chris. We're looking at maybe going to a better type of roof than the originally was done in 2002, but I'll refer that question to Preston.
So the 2015 edition, I believe we went to a 20-year warranty roof for that section of roof, which would mean that the lifespan would typically be more in that 20 to 25 range. We can go back and double confirm that, but that's what I recall. The rooftop units would be similar to the rooftop units that you have in place now. We're probably, again, in around that 20-year time period for that lifespan.
Preston, I think he was asking too about the roof that we go to. Would that on the assuming question 1 passes, the style of roof that we'd be looking at, would that be a similar 15 to 20, or would we be looking at longer?
We are looking at going to a little bit different roof system. The current roof system is what is termed as a ballast, or that's what the rock is on top of the rubber. We would go to an adhered rubber where the rock is no longer in place. And that we could specify out to be a 20-year warranty roof that would last longer, yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to Facebook Live. Anything? Nothing. Okay. Back to Zoom. Any other questions in Zoom? All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. And we would appreciate your support at the polls on February 9th. Again, polls are open from 12 to 8. Cottonwood Community Center, Wood Lake Community Center on Tuesday, February 9th. And if you can't be there, you can vote in person absentee at the Yellow Medicine Property and Public Services Department this Saturday, February 6th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So please remember to vote and stay safe and have a good night.